Hey, sixth graders, happy Monday. Welcome to lesson 5 of Unit 7, sixth grade math, online style. As always, just make sure you're in a space where you are ready to fully focus on class. So TV's off, phone is put away, and make sure you have your notes ready to go. Let's go ahead and set up our notes. This is Unit 7, Lesson 5, using negative numbers to make sense of context. Go ahead and fill that in on the title of your notes. Again, that's Unit 7, Lesson 5, using negative numbers to make sense of context. Okay, today's date is April 6th. Hope you guys had an awesome weekend. So what does this mean? What are we really doing today? We have been so far describing a couple of real world contexts with positive and negative numbers. One is temperatures. We've talked about how temperature can be positive and it can be negative. Do you remember the other example of a real life scenario that we've assigned positive and negative numbers to? Maybe you remembered it was elevation. Remember, you can be at an elevation that is above or below sea level. So those are two contexts that we've already practiced, temperature and elevation. One note on elevation, I looked at the elevation of Phoenix this morning. It is positive 1,086. So in your lesson summary comment, you could include what that means to have a positive elevation for Phoenix. Today, we're going to build on those two contexts that we've already been practicing with a couple more. One has a lot to do with money, and the other is what's called inventory, or amount of something that you have. So we're going to work on those two other contexts, but same thing. We're going to use negative numbers and positive numbers to talk about those quantities. Okay. All right, let's do a quick do now. What I want you to do is take a look at this chart. Make it a little bit bigger. I want you to take a look at that chart and just write down 1 to 2 things that you notice and 1 to 2 things that you wonder. Okay, so what you notice is an observation you have, and what you wonder is a question that you have or something this makes you think about. Okay, so take a minute, just jot down what do you notice and what do you wonder. I'll keep time on my watch. Go ahead. All right, guys, there's our time. I would really love to know what you noticed and wondered, so you can throw that in your comment if you have an idea written down, especially one that I don't talk about right now. But there are a couple of things that I would expect probably some of us observed and probably some of us wondered about. So the first is you may have noticed in this chart that there were both amounts and activities. And you may have noticed that the amounts were both positive and negative. Go ahead and put a star by your observation if you wrote that you noticed there were both positive and negative numbers. Okay. The other observation I want to make sure we talk about is starting to think about why would we have a negative amount? What are we really talking about here? There were no words in the question, just these words in the chart. But what you can see, take a look at the negative value here and what it means. It says buy my lunch was the activity and negative 10.80. And then the other negative value says buy a shirt. Do you notice something interesting? Maybe you notice that when we see the word buy, that was associated with a negative amount in the chart. Okay. Do you see the word buy anywhere else? Nope. When I bought something, the amount was negative. That's really interesting. I also think this last one is really interesting. The amount is 0.00, and the activity was pet my dog. So what do you think we're talking about here? It says, notice and wonder, it comes and goes. What's it? Maybe you thought money, right? An activity doing my chores might result in, this is a great allowance, $30 positive. Babysitting my cousin, $45 positive. Buying my lunch, negative. That costs me money to buy my lunch, whereas these other ones I was getting money for those chores and that babysitting. Allowance, $15, buy a shirt, that's money gone, right? Pet my dog, does that cost anything? No, a dog's love is free. Do I earn money if I pet my dog? No, I don't. If I earned money when I pet my dog, I would be the richest lady in the world. I wish that were true. Okay, so this chart is about money. So if you noticed or wondered, is this chart about money? Absolutely, it is. You may have wondered what is a positive value and what does a negative value mean? Hopefully that answered your question. A positive change or earning money, getting money for something was a positive amount changed. And spending money, buying something was a negative amount changed. Something that neither cost money nor earned money was no change, 0. Awesome. Let's try, still about money, different context a little bit. Let's try this one. It says the concession stand. The manager of the concession stand keeps records of all the supplies she buys and all of the items she sells. Okay, so she at a concession stand is buying things and selling things. That's good to know since we're talking about negative and positive. The table shows some of her records for Tuesday. Take a look at the table. It's interesting to see both negative and positive values here. All right, what I want you to do is go ahead and try answering questions 1 through 4 on your own on your paper. I'm going to go ahead and get a timer up for 2 minutes so that we can hold ourselves accountable. Here we go, 2 minutes around the clock. All right, go ahead and begin. Just kidding, you can't see. There we go. All right, let's check in briefly. I was only able to get question one totally finished within that time, and I probably started just a little bit after you, but I want to give us some more time, but let's just review question one first, okay? All right, here is my answer for question one. The question asked what was being sold. I noticed that she sold donuts, hot dogs, apples, and French fries. And here's one way to think about it, or one way to reason about it. These items were the ones in the chart that had negative quantities. So what does that show? I think that shows that the amount she had is decreasing. So I don't know how many numbers of donuts she had to start with, but the quantity has gone down or changed by 58 because that quantity is negative. And then the value is positive. So this makes sense to me as something that's being sold because the person selling them has less donuts now, but they have more money, right? So I see in the quantity, the number of donuts is going down, but the value, the money that I get is going up, okay? That's different from straws. Have you ever been to a concession stand where you had to buy a straw? No. The concession stand manager probably ordered some straws and got some in a shipment. That's probably why this is such a big amount. They're not just giving out one for every drink they sell, right? They're getting in bulk a bunch of straws. So the amount of straws that I have as the concession manager is increasing, so positive 3,000. And then why is the value negative, do you think? The value is negative because in order for me to get 3,000 straws from my concession stand, I had to buy them, right? It's a cost of doing business. So in order to get those 3,000 straws, I had to give away $10.35 of my revenue for my concession stand. Okay, so I'm going to show my answer one more time. Feel free to pause it if you want to adjust your answer. Again, I thought she sold these 4 items. Those are ones with negative quantities. These items have negative quantities, showing that the amount she had is decreasing. Okay, let's see on these last 3 questions. Let's take 2 minutes for these last 3 questions and to adjust question 1 if you need to. Okay, go ahead. All right, there's our time. I was just able to finish, so if you need a little bit of extra time, go ahead and click pause. If you're ready, here we go. Question 2 said, how can we interpret the negative 58 in this situation? Interpret is a great word. Interpret means say what that number means in the context or in the story. So in this case, and I've talked through these both a little bit to give you a preview, the negative 58 is here. That is the quantity of specifically the donuts. But we can push that even further. When I was writing my thinking, let me actually cover up question 3. That makes it a little easier to see. Okay. I started by writing negative 58 represents the amount of donuts. And then I thought, amount of donuts is kind of vague. Like, did she sell those donuts? Did she eat them? Did she give them away? Like, what's happening with that? So instead, I added on, she sold 58 donuts. So the negative quantity means the amount she has is decreasing, and she's earning money for it. So that means in a store context that she must have sold those 58 donuts. Check your answer for the word sold. Go ahead and put a star by it if you had it. If you didn't have it, go ahead and add in this phrase, sold 58 donuts. Excellent. The next question, question 3 says, interpret what that number negative 10.35 represents in the story. Here's what I was thinking. I wrote negative 10.35 is the value of 3,000 straws. Again, that was just literally information given in the table. It said value, and it was in the row that said straws. But I want to push it a little bit. Let's use some better words here. What does that tell me? It tells me she bought 3,000 straws for $10.35. Bought is the key word here. Go ahead and put a star next to bought, or maybe a synonym like purchased or paid $10.35 for the straws. Really nice job if you got that vocab. So again, looking at this one, the value for the manager was negative $10.35, right? That is a lot of straws for that amount of money. Our sea turtles are not happy, are they? All right, question 4. On which item did she spend the most amount of money? Explain your reasoning. So here's our key phrase, spend the most. So I'm looking, where in the table do I see that she spent money on something? I see she spent money if the value in dollars is negative. So here and here. Which one did she spend more on, straws or pizza? I think you probably got it. She spent more on pizza. Here's my answer. She spent the most money on pizza. That was $116.87 compared to straws, only $10.35. That's a great question because often when we compare a number like negative 116.87 and a number like negative 10.35, if I'm being asked to compare the value of those, which of these is less than the other? Our strategy is to draw a number line. Let me do that really quickly. I'm going to put 0 on the number line, and then I like to start at 0 and count backwards. What would I hit first? Yep, I would hit that negative 10.35, and then I would keep counting probably way farther than this, but I'm just going to put it here, negative 116.87. So which one is less? Remember, less is to the left, so this one is actually less than. Negative 116.87 is less than negative 10.35. When I say she spent the most, I actually picked the number with the least value. Isn't that interesting? Spending the most is actually talking about how far from 0 are we? Did I only spend this much, or did I spend this much? Right? Clearly, then you can see that here I'm spending the most on pizza, that number that's farther away from 0. But again, the value of these numbers, we say 116.87 is less than negative 10.35 because this number is farther to the left on the number line. Awesome. Let's try another question. So I promised that we would talk about money and that we would talk about inventories. That's what we're going to do next. All right, we're going to talk about drinks in a vending machine. So when I think about drinks in the vending machine, a question like this could talk about how much money the vending machine is taking in, or the money does get taken out of vending machines and taken to a bank. And also the amount of drinks that are inside the vending machine at any given time is also a number that's changing over time. So that's actually what we're going to talk about, the number of drinks inside. Let's read. A vending machine in an office building sells bottled beverages. The machine keeps track of all changes in the number of bottles from sales and from machine refills and maintenance. Wow, that question was confusing. I'm going to read it one more time. The machine keeps track of all changes in the number of bottles from sales, refills, and maintenance. Let's think about that for a second. Think about how many bottles are in the vending machine at any given time. If bottles are being sold, do you think the number of bottles in the vending machine would increase or decrease? The bottles in the vending machine for sales would decrease. So I walk up to the vending machine, I put in my $1.50, I take out one bottle. Now the vending machine has fewer bottles in it. So sales decrease my amount of bottles. What about machine refills? So this is someone's job to come in, roll in a cart of drinks and stock the machine, refill the machine with drinks. Do you think that would be a positive change in the number of bottles or a negative change? A positive change, right? Putting more in, the number of bottles in the vending machine goes up. Absolutely. And maintenance. So think the vending machine wasn't working, it was stuck. Would that change the number of bottles positively or negatively? Trick question. Neither. Someone who's doing maintenance isn't going to put any bottles in or take any bottles out. They're just fixing the machine. So a neither positive nor a negative change. Awesome. This record shows the changes for every 5-minute period over 1 hour. Sweet. All right. In our guided practice, we're really going to talk about questions 1 through 5. So I want to give you some time to be working on those questions. Question 6, we're not going to review. If you have a specific question about it, if you get to try it and have a question, leave me a note in the comment. We're not going to review question 6. It's there for you if you are ready for a little extra spicier challenge. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to work on questions 1 through 5. Question 6 when you're ready. Let's put 3.5 minutes on the clock. Please go ahead and get started. All right, there is our time. So let's come back together and review. Again, if you need a little bit of extra time, just click pause and then hit play when you're ready to go. Again, the goal is to be finished with 1 through 5. Okay. All right. So number 1 said, what might a positive number mean in this context? And hopefully our review of the question at the beginning helped you to answer this one. So here's what I wrote. I did not write in a complete sentence here, but I know that a positive number equals or represents an increase in number of bottles in the machine. So you're looking for increase in number of bottles. So go ahead and put a star by that phrase if you included it in your answer, or you included something that means the same thing. If you just wrote positive is increase, go ahead and add in increase of what? An increase in the number of bottles. It's not an increase in the number of people who visited the machine. It may or may not be an increase of how many quarters are in the machine. It is an increase in the number of bottles in the machine. Okay. All right, number 2, what would a 0 in the second column mean in this context? I do see a 0, a couple of them here from 835 to 839. The change in the number of bottles was 0. What does that mean? I like 2 possible answers for this question, so I'll show you mine and then listen for the second one. I thought that a 0 would represent no change in the number of bottles. So nobody came to refill the machine at that time, and nobody came to purchase any drinks from the machine at that time. It also might mean, what if 12 bottles were put in by somebody, and then in the same time period, 12 bottles were taken out by somebody. In that case, if I'm increasing by 12 and then decreasing by 12, then I would also show that 0. So I think probably most of you wrote there would be no change in the amount of bottles in the machine, but also it might mean that the number put in was equal to the number taken out in that time period. Cool, that's a good one. Number 3, which numbers, positive or negative, result in fewer bottles in the machine? Number 3, here's what I wrote. And you should have written negative numbers result in fewer bottles in the machine. So look for that phrase, negative numbers, put a star by it on your paper if you got it. Okay, number 4, we're almost there, team. At what time was there the greatest change to the number of bottles in the machine? At what time was there the greatest change to the number of bottles in the machine? How did that affect the number of remaining bottles in the machine? Awesome. So the camera keeps getting in the way. Let's look at this number of bottles. I'm looking for the change that it impacts the amount of bottles the most. And what I see right here is the greatest change, positive 24. Okay, positive 24 is the greatest change. So then my answer, let's see, question 4 says, at what time? So this change occurred from 850 to 854. So on my paper, I wrote from 850 to 854. That's the answer you're looking for on your paper. Give yourself a star if you got it. From 850 to 854, there was the greatest change to the number of bottles. Second part of the question, also important. That change increased the total by 24. So the second thing we're looking for is that the number of bottles increased by 24. So go ahead and find those parts in your answer as well. If you didn't have those parts on your own or you forgot to answer the second part of the question, that's okay. Go ahead and pause the video and make sure you get that down on your paper. That change increased the total by 24. Awesome. Last one that we'll review together, number 5. At which time period, 805 to 809, or 825 to 829, was there a greater change to the number of bottles in the machine? Explain. What a great question. Okay, 805 to 809, I can see that the change was positive 12. So that means that the number of bottles in the machine increased by 12. The second time period, 825 to 829, had a change of -12. So that means the number of bottles decreased by 12. Someone must have purchased a dozen drinks. Okay, so which of these is the greater change? I actually think this is a trick question. They have the same amount of change. One of them is increasing the number of bottles and one of them is decreasing the number of bottles, but the amount of change is the same. So here's what I wrote. Number 5, neither. The change was 12 in both time periods. Okay. Now, did the exact same thing happen in those two time periods? Absolutely not. In one of them, 12 bottles were put into the machine, and in one, 12 were taken out. But the change in the total of bottles was the same, positive 12, versus in the positive 12 and the negative 12 change. I can show this on a number line, and I'd like to. The more I talk about it, the more I want to keep explaining it in different ways. So let's visualize it instead of explaining it in a bunch of ways. Now the total number of bottles in the machine wasn't 0 when someone put 12 in, but the change from whatever was there before to what's there now is 12. The change to whatever was there before, and then I take out 12, that distance, that amount of change is still 12. So different direction, different meaning, but the change is still 12. Okay. All right. Last thing to do, folks, is get ready for our lesson summary. We're not going to go over again question 6, but if you have a specific question about it, leave it in the comment for me. Here we go, lesson 5 summary. Let's read. Sometimes we represent changes in a quantity with positive and negative numbers. We did that with money. We did it today with inventory. If the quantity, here's the kicker, if the quantity increases, the change is positive. If it decreases, the change is negative. If the amount of money I have increases, I represent it with a positive number. If the amount of money I have decreases because I bought something, then the change is negative. Here's another example. Suppose 5 gallons of water is put in a washing machine. We can represent the change in the number of gallons as positive 5. 5 gallons of water goes in the washing machine, increases its amount of water by 5. If 3 gallons is emptied from the machine, we can represent this change as -3. So the quantity is decreasing, change is negative. It is especially common to represent money, this is so true, we receive with positive numbers, and money we spend with negative numbers. Suppose Claire gets $30 for her birthday, positive or negative? And spends $18 buying lunch for herself and a friend, positive or negative? To her, the value of the gift can be represented as positive 30, and the value of lunch as, well, the negative sign's over here, don't get tricked, negative 18. Okay. Whether a number is considered positive or negative depends on the person's perspective. If Claire's grandmother gives her $20 for her birthday, think about this, Claire might see this as positive 20 because to her, to Claire, the amount of money she has increased. But her grandmother might see it as negative 20 because to her, the grandma, the amount of money has decreased. That's such a great example. So let's just imagine for a minute that I give Isabella a birthday check for $10. Happy birthday, Isabella. Then my amount of money would be decreasing by 10 because I'm giving money away. But Isabella now is receiving money. She's getting $10, so she thinks the change is going up. So when you're reading these kind of questions and thinking about these questions, you want to pay careful attention to the perspective of the person who is either giving or receiving money, or for example, like the washing machine's amount of water increases. Maybe the amount of water that's in the pipes decreases, for example. Okay, in general, when using positive and negative numbers to represent changes, we have to be very clear about what it means when that change is positive and what it means when the change is negative. Awesome. Hopefully this sparks some good ideas for your comment. Remember to leave a 1 to 2 sentence lesson summary in the private comments in Google Classroom. I love reading those. Two more reminders. You have an independent practice assignment that's attached to this post, so go ahead and go complete that assignment. Be really careful to read things carefully to identify whether a change was positive or negative. It is due at 10 p.m. tonight. And then a final thing that I want you to do, so lesson summary, independent practice, last thing, mark as complete. Can you please mark this assignment as complete when you've done those three things? That just lets me and Mr. Zamora know when your work is ready to be turned in, and it helps us also count and see what is our rate of completion. So what % of students are completing a given assignment, and we're competing with 7th grade. So go ahead and mark it as complete when you are done, okay? It has been wonderful to spend this time with you. I'll see you again here tomorrow.